Hello, welcome to the webinar Celebrating the Impact of the Technology Modernization Fund. My name is Ross Nodurft. I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance for Digital Innovation. We're a nonprofit organization focused on promoting policies and advocating for funding that allow public sector organizations to access and leverage the latest commercial technology to meet the enterprise and mission needs of those public sector organizations. We are lucky today to be joined in this webinar by a number of government representatives. They range from Technology Modernization Fund board members to the members of the Technology Modernization Fund PMO. We're going to learn a lot today. I'm very excited about it. But before we get started, I'd like to turn it over to the Executive Director of the Program Management Office for the Technology Modernization Fund at TSA, Ms. Raylene Young.
Thank you. Sorry, I think the beginning of your sound cut out, but I think I hear that you're handing it off to me. So hi, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us today for what I expect will be a great discussion featuring leaders from the TMF PMO and our board and industry partners. So to get started, I'd love to share a bit more about what the TMF is and where we are today. As Ross mentioned, I'm the executive director of the TMF PMO, and I here at GSA, and we provide a lot of different kinds of support and lead overall operations for the TMF. So the TMF is an innovative investment program that enables federal agencies to deliver simple, seamless, and secure services to the American public by taking a modern, agile approach to federal technology investment and delivery. This mission has been at the forefront of the TMF since our inception in 2018. But we've also evolved greatly in the past 6 years since we started, making it easier for agencies to apply, get useful feedback, engage with the TMF board, and receive the individualized support needed to make projects successful. Today, the fund operates at tremendous scale. We manage more than $1 billion in total funding, with over $750 million actively invested in 45 investments across 27 different federal agencies. The TMF serves as a catalyst that can complement the appropriations process to address technology modernization needs and to show what's possible across government. It gives us an opportunity to invest in teams that will take a user-centered, nimble approach to modernization, designing with users, launching minimum viable products, and shipping products and services successfully and in shorter timeframes. Our investments aim to empower the federal workforce, giving them new technology and tools to increase efficiency and enabling them to better serve the public by delivering services that meet today's expectations. We've seen how critical the need is for technology modernization across government. And to give you a sense of the demand, the TMF has received and reviewed more than 230 proposals totaling over $3.5 billion in funding requested. As a result, the TMF is highly selective, and our technical expertise in areas such as customer experience, cybersecurity, and user design and research, all of which you'll hear more about today, enables the TMF board and the PMO, along with OMB, to evaluate every proposal and actively advise agencies on best practices. Although many of our investments are still underway, we know they are succeeding as agencies are delivering better outcomes for the American public in easier, faster, cheaper, and more secure ways. For example, TMF investments are helping to enable 1 million veterans to request and receive fully digital service records through the National Archives and Records Administration, helping to improve the customer experience for anyone seeking access to 12 million historic land records at the U.S. Department of Interior's Bureau of Land Management, decreasing those efforts to publish records by 80%. And they're working towards strengthening the security of data and privacy protections for 100 million students and borrowers that the Department of Education supports, 2 million civilian federal employees in OPM systems, and millions of veterans that use VA's digital services. The projects that the TMF invests in have real human impacts on the way the federal government provides services to the American people, increasing public trust and making it easier to get the services they need. I'm so proud of the work that we do, and I'm excited for you all to dive into the discussion today. Thank you, and looking forward to hearing the panel, and I'll hand it back to Ross.
Thank you, Raylene. We appreciate you joining us this morning, kicking this off for us. So to start the broader discussion, we're lucky to be joined by Sheena Burrell, who is the CIO of NARA and also a board member for the TMF Board of Directors. We're going to ask Sheena. I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself a little more in a second, but I do want to say real quickly that we're going to ask you to wear a number of hats today. So we appreciate in advance the flexibility and the perspectives that you're gonna bring to the discussion. But to kick us off, if you don't mind introducing yourself a little bit, and then we'll move on from there.
Sure, I'm really excited to be here. And as you said, I do wear a number of hats. Currently, right now, I am the Chief Information Officer at the National Archives and Records Administration. I've been here for almost about 5 years, and I was an associate CIO here as well as the deputy CIO. So I have been doing some really exciting things with digitization, as well as moving forward with modernization of our legacy technology. Prior to joining the National Archives, I worked at NASA and the CIO's organization there, working on the FITARA implementation, as well as modernizing technology and cybersecurity activities. And prior to that, I worked for 15 years at the Social Security Administration. It is one of the agencies that I definitely love and call home sometimes, even during my tenure at these different agencies. And SSA will always be my home since I worked there for so long. So that's a little bit about me, but I'm super excited to talk about my role as a TMF board member. I've been on the TMF board for about 2 years now, one as an alternate board member and now as a voting board member. So I'm really excited.
Great. Let's start there, because some of us have looked at it and see who's on the board, and we're excited that you are taking what seems like to be a more permanent role, but we don't necessarily understand what the different roles are on the board. So give us an overview. There's 13 folks. How many are voting? What do the different roles mean? And what does that mean for what you're currently doing right now?
Yeah, so I started out as an alternate board member. This was when the American Rescue Plan was just implemented, and we had an influx of proposals. So we knew that we had a pipeline of proposals that needed to be reviewed, and the TMF board brought on the alternate board members to vote in the place of board members who were unable to be there, or to be able to really kind of get to a quorum. These alternate board members serve as a term. So they have I believe, a 1-year term. And then we have some voting members. There are 2 voting members that are permanent, and that is the GSA CIO as well as the federal CIO. And then there are I guess 6 in total, so 4 other members that are voting members, but they also are term appointments as well. So there will be a rotation of some of the people on the TMF board from time to time, but they have a really well-oiled, streamlined system so that those people who are coming in don't feel left behind at all. So right now, the voting members vote, but honestly, the alternate board members vote as well when needed.
Thank you. That's helpful. All right, let's jump into what some of the projects look like. So given the buckets of cybersecurity, given the buckets of customer experience, what types of projects do you like to see come before the board? Are there specific projects you see more of? Talk to us a little bit about what the inflow of project proposals looks like.
Honestly, I would say that currently we've been seeing a lot of zero trust architecture projects, and that's to be expected as we had had an executive order that came out. And when that executive order came out, it didn't necessarily come with funding. And so when we had the executive order to say, please implement zero trust architecture by 2024, a lot of agencies were eager to utilize this fund because they didn't have money just kind of set aside and laying around waiting for those executive orders. And so I actually love seeing some of those type of things. We love modernization projects or projects that have an impact to our constituents. So these are for customer experience, making sure that we're offering services that are streamlined and that are engaging with our customers. One of the things that I would love to be able to see more, and just as a federal government to see, is more artificial intelligence, robotic process automation, machine learning. As you have more generative AI that the American people are really excited about, they're going to want to see that in the applications that they interface with the government. And I would love to be able to see more of those type of projects that come in. And those are more kind of your innovative type of projects and things that may not necessarily have, agencies may not necessarily have that kind of discretionary funding to be able to invest in those things, but they do have a big impact to the rest of the American population, as it could streamline your processes, automate those processes, and provide a good user experience, with security, with ethical things that, policies that you put in place to just kind of provide some faster service to the American people.
That's super helpful. Okay. And I'll dig into it a little bit, but I heard you say a couple of key things here, and innovative projects, things that they may not have budgeted for, but that are still garnering efficiencies. I think that's interesting, and we'll talk about kind of the necessary repayment processes a little bit later on, but good to know. All right, so next question for you. What do you tell other CIOs? And this is kind of shifting from a board member hat to kind of the one that you've worn as a CIO who's applied for and successfully gotten investments from the TMF for your organization. So what do you tell other CIOs who are considering applying for funds? How has that process improved over the last 18 months? And what advice do you have for them as they're working through the different stages of proposal development?
Absolutely. So let me just kind of take this in chunks. So the first one is, as a CIO, even before becoming the CIO at the National Archives, working at NASA, that's when the TMF first started. And this was before the American Rescue Plan. This was before the flexible repayment options. A lot of the agencies, just speaking to community of practice, there were a lot of agencies that were very nervous to take advantage of the TMF because of the repayment. And how would they pay the money back? And when would the money need to be paid back? And what if there wasn't any cost savings from the investment that the TMF approved? How would they work those funds into the repayment process? I think as we received additional funding from the American Rescue Plan, and we had additional guidance or new guidance that provided flexibility in repayment. So with the original TMF funds, you had to have 100% repayment, and you did have time. You had about 5 years to do that repayment. With the American Rescue Plan, there was more flexibility in the payment option, right? So you didn't have to come back with 100% repayment. There was a possibility to do 25%, 50%. And that really kind of depended on the agency and where they were able to see some of that return on investment. I think one of the big things that I'm seeing right now, as more people or more agencies are making use of the TMF and the flexible repayment option, I think that we're seeing more people who want to take advantage of that. We're seeing more creative ways in terms of repayment, not necessarily just saying, I have investment A and I need to take the cost savings from investment A to be able to repay the TMF. I think we're seeing some agencies where they're being a little bit more creative. I will also say, in terms of changes in the process, I wasn't a board member when we first started the TMF, But as a board member now, one of the great things that I'm seeing is having Harrison. He's on our board and he works within acquisition, and he really brings that hat to the table and being able to be creative in terms of acquisition solutions. We have OMB RMOs. This is on the budget side, reviewing the proposals that are coming in and being able to offer advice from a budget perspective from OMB, because they are desk officers and they know those agencies, they know the budgets of those agencies. I think that's helpful. I think it brings that perspective of FATAR into TMF, where you have acquisitions and you have CFO or budget people at the table with technologists to be able to help the agencies make those decisions, as well as kind of coming up with those creative solutions in terms of repayment. I think that one of the other big things that I've seen as a TMF board member, even in the 2 years that I've been on the board, is just the streamlining of the process. We had over 200 investment proposals that came in, and we had to review them pretty fast because we had that backlog and we wanted to get that backlog down. I think, as Raylene mentioned, and Raylene came in, we've been able to increase the resources on the PMO side, which they brought their expertise from just kind of cybersecurity or digitization or maybe acquisitions, all those different key roles that we needed really kind of helped streamline the process. Now I'm putting on my CIO hat and not a board member hat. I would say that what I could also see is different agencies, when they were going through the process, we were able to really kind of pinpoint areas where agencies needed help in terms of how do we get signatories for the interagency agreement and sign off on so that we could actually make the transfers. How do we set up those transfer accounts? A lot of the agencies that don't have working capital funds, this was pretty new to them in terms of setting up these different accounts for repayment and being able to receive funds from the different government agency or different, not their regular appropriation. And so setting those things up, we learned that through the process. And I think that the PMO's organization was able to pinpoint those areas with the analysis, just kind of going through and saying, okay, here's how long it's taken agency A to get through the process, but agency B was able to get through this during this time. What are those lessons learned, and how can we make agencies get through the process faster? How can we streamline it? As my agency, just kind of going through that process, it was really helpful for having the PMO group. They really were our liaisons. They helped us as, we were making transfers to the board for repayment, as well as getting money into our agency, really understanding just the guidance of that process once you were approved. I've definitely seen that being streamlined. I think the analysis was helpful, and I actually think having a PMO liaison was critical in the success of just those transitions. So I know I said a lot there, but I definitely think that it has been, in just the 2 years that I have been on the TMF board, the streamlining of the process has been great.
And look, I think we're in the panel discussion, we're going to hear from some of the folks that are on the PMO, and they're going to be able to tell us exactly, statistically what's going on and how it looks. And it's very exciting. I want to just recap, make sure, because I heard a lot of great things. One, as a CIO, you've seen the actual process for the initial project proposal and the final project proposal get streamlined.
Yes.
You have seen whether it's via PMO help or OMB's resource management office help and desk officer help, people are connecting the dots between the financial functions and the CIO technical functions ahead of time as the projects are being developed initially, which is saving a lot of time. And then the last thing I heard, which I want to dig into a little bit more, is that there are creative ways for repayment. The folks that are listening in probably saw yesterday that the House Oversight Committee passed out of markup a bill that's kind of focuses the repayments, right? They want to make sure that the TMF is there for the long term. So, if you could talk a little bit about some of the interesting and creative repayment processes that you have seen to date, whether it's the one that you have and you're working on with your NAR hat on, or others that you've seen in the pipeline. I think that's helpful for folks to hear.
Sure, absolutely. So I will say for my agency, we have a revolving fund. And this is because as agencies ask us to store their records, they do have to pay us a fee. And we also have a fee for digitizing records for other agencies. And so we do have a way that when we have the project that we have is related to the veterans backlog, and we house these records about veterans, and that's part of that revolving fund. So we are getting paid for that. And so we're utilizing some of the money from that revolving fund in order to pay back our TMF, I guess, loan here. Other agencies have that have something similar. I would say like login.gov, other agencies pay for that service. And I think that some of the payment that other agencies are paying for login.gov, some of that money would go to being able to pay back the TMF fund for the login.gov implementation. But then there are agencies that don't have that kind of revolving fund or don't have a working capital fund. And so let's just say it's a cybersecurity proposal that comes in, and we know that sometimes with cybersecurity proposals or that they don't necessarily have that return on investment or that cost savings from the perspective of I'm getting rid of this application, or I'm modernizing this application so it will cost me less in O&M. So they're looking at other cost saving things that they're doing, because some agencies are able to look at the TMF as an accelerator. They're utilizing those funds to accelerate the implementation of something that was maybe already planned, but for a later time. And then because it was already planned and they requested that from a budget perspective, they could take that money and repay the TMF. So those are some of the things that I've been seeing. Or even if there's cost savings from a modernization activity elsewhere that was already funded, that they could take the cost savings from there and doing a repayment. Again, I definitely think the American Rescue Plan and being able to have that flexibility in repayment and not necessarily having to do the 100% has really helped the TMF board be able to invest and having more agencies come forward to request those funds.
Thank you. That's very helpful. One more question about kind of your project internally at NAR. So right now you are, or two projects, depending on how you look at it. And we appreciate that the TMF is very transparent and kind of how things are moving along. Can you talk to us a little bit about going from final project proposal to obligation to implementation, and kind of how that process works, and then how you guys are doing over at NAR right now, and any lessons learned from that?
Oh, sure. We have plenty of lessons learned. So the process, how it works, first we start with our investment proposal. And this is kind of like your idea. Hey, I have this idea. This is how much it would cost. This is what I'm thinking. This is my acquisition strategy. This is, does it impact cybersecurity? Does it impact customer experience? Those type of things. From there, the board reviews and we make a vote. And this is just based off of what was submitted in paper form or electronically. From there, once the board says, yes, we agree, it moves on to the full proposal. And with the full project proposal, this is when the agency actually comes in and can pitch to the board, like a Shark Tank kind of thing, where, hey, I have this idea and here's what I'm trying to do. I will never forget Department of Labor. They came in and they had this stack of papers behind them. And they said, with your help with this process, we're going to get rid of all of this paper. And I think that was really beneficial. I mean, it was something tangible that we could see, and it was great. So that's the FPP stage. And once you're approved from there, that's when you get a decision memo. We may have some questions as board members, or even suggestions as board members, which I really feel is so helpful. There are community of practices. There are other proposals that are similar in scope, and that means that two agencies could be working together that may have never worked together before, to really learn from each other as they go through implementation. And then you kind of go through the process of getting your first tranche of money. And that process, I'm definitely going to leave that to the PMO, but because just from a CIO perspective, I mean, you have to go through your CFO's organization, you have to sign an IAA, you set up an account, and you do have to get sign off by multiple people within the agency. And then you really kind of start your project. One of my lessons learned, I will say first and foremost, that your industry partners are really your partners. They're your strategic partners, and they really do want you to be successful, and you, of course, want your agency to be successful. So really looking to them to be your strategic partner, getting understanding from them in terms of how we can make this successful, understanding your acquisition strategy prior to coming to the board, making sure that that is all worked out, so that once the board gives you the money, you can hit the ground running. I had a modernization project from an old legacy system. Culture eats change for breakfast, I will tell you that. And so having champions early in the process, having people who are really bought in to that change is important. Because for us, and I'm speaking for the National Archives, when you have this old legacy system with custom code, that means that your business has really bought in and is really in deep into that legacy system. And to have them kind of take a step back, look at this and say, what can we do out of the box and configure instead of customize? You really need a champion, because now even with sprint planning, you're going to have someone that says, that's a nice to have, and we need to put that on the backlog. And this is a must, and we need to do this first. That grooming session that you're going to go through, you're going to have to be partners with your product owner from a technology and a business standpoint to really make sure that that is successful. The second thing with that is that buy-in, is that your customers have to have a buy-in to that change, even though it's from a technology standpoint. I'm saying, hey, I need to get off of this legacy system. It's old. It takes a lot to maintain. It's highly customized or configured to the point where if this one vendor left today, I may have some issues with it going forward. And so having someone who really understands that technical architecture and products owners are prepared to make that change is really important. The last thing I would say is kind of really making sure that as a technology person, you're helping your business really trust the process. Our first couple of sprints were really kind of building out the framework and trying to help our business people see where we could go. So it was a lot there, and where you guys may see, like, NARA, we started off and it looks like one project for the TMF, but it's really two separate applications. And we took our time with the second application, trying to apply all the lessons learned from the first application. And that's why right now we have obligated maybe only half of what we were intending to do, because we took those lessons learned and we said, for the second application that we're trying to modernize, we need to really make sure that we have a community of interest. We need to get that buy-in. We need to work with our partners on the industry side, like our vendor, as well as on the business side, so that we all are on the same playing field before we just kind of move forward the way that we did with the first application.
That's super helpful. So just again, my takeaway from what you're saying right now is that the buy-in from the owner of the system, the legacy system, which is, all of the CX, the cybersecurity, a lot of what we're talking about are updates to the legacy systems and processes that are in those organizations. So having a buy-in from the folks who are using it, the mission owners or the enterprise IT owners, right? I mean, your CISO is keeping you safe across the organization, right? So having the folks buy in from the ground level on the way up is probably the best pathway to success. And then from there, making sure you have the financial backing from your budget office, your CFO shop, as well as working continuously with other people who may be leveraging the system going forward. So that's super helpful. Let me ask you now, we've got a limited amount of time. I do want to touch on the industry aspect. You brought it up a couple of times now, and I want to really dig into it because you've got a lot of folks on here who represent different partners, industry partners. What role in your mind do industry partners play in the process of working with agencies as they develop, pitch and implement TMF potential TMF projects?
One of the things, let me just speak to my feds to say that your industry counterparts are your partners. They are your strategic partners, and to utilize their experience, their wealth of knowledge to be able to come up with creative solutions that maybe we in the federal government haven't thought of yet, or could do better. I would say for the industry side, help us to think about those things that we could do better, could do faster, come up with those recommendations. A lot of you are already ingrained into these agencies and already know where those pain points are, already understand, what the TMF boards are looking for. Help make those business cases for your federal partners. It's not necessarily just throwing a white paper over to the TMF board. It is really kind of having a sound plan and having an understanding of the problem as well as the solution. And I think that industry is in the best position to be able to do that. I also think that as industry, we have a couple of TMF proposals that are utilizing the same technology. And if they're utilizing the same technology, then the people in industry should be able to help each of those different agencies. Hey, we're doing this over here with the Department of Education, and HUD, you're utilizing that same technology. How can we, or how might we be able to put these two agencies, together and do some of those lessons learned and help kind of build upon these solutions to make it better, and to kind of help facilitate those conversations. I will tell you, I am forever grateful for some of my people in industry who said, you know what, Sheena, I have this other agency that I'm already working with. How about I introduce you to them, and you guys can kind of talk about it and partner, even without us. I did that with the Department of Education, and they had did their upgrade to their network, and we were doing the same thing. And it was our industry partner who put us together and really helped to formulate that bond, and to also help us to learn from each other. And I think being a strategic partner really does mean having those relationships, having that knowledge, and providing those recommendations to your Fed partners.
So just to put a point on it, it's okay to talk about TMF proposals with your federal partners, potential customers, current customers. It's encouraged to do so when you're trying to solve a problem and help those agency partners understand their own pain points within the organization and make connections where possible to other successful projects, whether they're TMF or not, that have technology, all with the goal of moving people from the kind of those painful legacy bespoke systems to more modern commercial, I would say commercial cloud-based solutions. So, but yeah, no, thank you. That's super helpful. Last question, and then we'll turn it over. We've got about 3 minutes left. So, you're a board member. You've been there for 2 years. We've talked a lot about all the good iterations we've seen. Where does the PMO need to go from here to continue to make the process better and more streamlined, et cetera? What are some of the areas that you would recommend that we could focus on, whether it's government folks, whether it's PMO, whether it's industry folks? What are some of the areas that we need to continue to improve?
That's a really good question. That one actually might have me a little stumped. I may not be as verbose. I think the PMO is doing an excellent job. I think that having the subject matter expert knowledge has been really helpful. And I think that we need to continue that and maybe have more of it. And then maybe also having the PMO, just like I'm saying for industry, kind of help that with that networking and navigating for some agencies that are maybe smaller or maybe don't have this much experience, maybe kind of helping there. One of the big areas I will say too is that some agencies may just not be good at writing proposals. And they just might need help writing the proposals. And that may be an area where I can see the PMO maybe taking a little bit more of a hands-on approach in terms of helping to really understand what the customer is asking for, that agency is asking for, and then being able to translate it into something that they know that the TMF will understand and kind of comprehend a little bit. I know that we've seen some agencies when they have their IPP that has come in, it's like, yeah, this may be a good idea, but maybe they're just not articulating it well. And I think that that was probably one of the stumbling blocks that we could probably help with.
That's great. Thank you. Sheena, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your service. I know you've been with the government for many years now, and we really appreciate having somebody of your caliber helping navigate some of the technical challenges we face today. So we appreciate it. We're going to turn it over to our panel that follows next. Let me real quick introduce Mike, and then we'll turn off and turn it over to them. And for the audience members who are still here, please keep putting your Q's and A's in there. Even if we're not able to answer them, the panel may be able to answer them, but we want to hear your questions as well. So thank you all very much. And now I'll turn it over to Mike Klauser with Okta to introduce the panel. Thank you, Sheena.
Thanks again, Ross. Thank you, Executive Director Young and Ms. Burrell. My name is Mike Klauser, and I have the privilege of leading U.S. federal government affairs for Okta, the leading cloud-based digital identity SaaS platform. Joined today with a wonderful panel. The point of the panel, I think, is to double click on some of the things you've heard today, really dive into the nuts and bolts of TMF. And I think really with two big overarching goals. I think one is to demystify the process, demystify TMF for agencies listening that are interested in doing business with TMF. And second, just to celebrate TMF and all its accomplishments and give the panel opportunity to talk about that. And especially in light of yesterday's action in the House, where a key committee advanced a bill to reauthorize TMF a few years early in a unanimous vote, which is rare for that committee. So this is a program that has a lot of interest, a lot of backing and bipartisan support, and I think it's going to be exciting to learn a little bit more about it. So with that, I'll just turn to my panelists maybe to do self-introductions. Maybe first go to Jesse, and then Sean and Sasha.
Great. Hi, all. I'm Jessie Pastilkin. I lead the customer experience portfolio here at the TMF, and I will pass it over to Sasha.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sasha McGee. I lead the cybersecurity portfolio here at TMF. Sean?
Thanks, Sasha. Yeah, my name is Sean Connolly. I work at CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. We like security so much we have the name twice, security twice in our name. I've been supporting the TMF, like you heard earlier, for about 2 years. And also outside the TMF, I support the TIC program management office, and then also the zero trust efforts going on across the federal government. Mike, back to you.
Appreciate it. So maybe let's start with Jessie and Sasha. I think maybe just start with talking about the PMO and what is the role of the PMO throughout the whole process. You know, starting with identifying projects, you know, submitting, refining proposals, and then implementing the final projects. Maybe just talk about what the PMO is, about how big it is, and then its role in that process.
Sure, I guess I'll start, and Jessie, you can jump in. The PMO is about 20 people. You know, we play a role throughout the process. You know, we start with identifying projects. So we encourage agencies to reach out to us when they have problems, and ideally, you know, ideas on how to solve them, but not always. You know, and we work with agencies to figure out whether the TMF is appropriate for them, and if so, how to move their proposal forward. Once they do come up with proposals, we work hand in hand with them to refine those proposals, to really make sure that they include, you know, all the information that we need to make a recommendation and for the board to make a decision. You know, we connect them with other agencies who have face similar challenges and problems. And then we really, like, as Sheena mentioned earlier, you know, we work with the agencies to make sure that their proposals are reviewed on the strength of the idea and the solution, and not on how good they are at answering, you know, an 8-question form on a website. So we really work with them to help refine their presentation so that it is presented in as clear a way as possible. Jessie?
Nothing to add. Let's keep going, because yeah, I want to get into some of the meat of this.
Well, for sure. How about I was going to turn to Sean next. You know, zero trust cybersecurity has represented a very large chunk of investments made to date. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what agencies brought to the table? What did they think about? What sort of case studies and problems were they trying to solve in those investments that you've made?
Sure. Yeah, it's a common question. What are the agencies doing? Raylene talked about this earlier, but just to kind of footstep, there is a website, tmfcio.gov. Part of that, they list out the number of proposals that have been awarded. Help me out, guys. There's what, 25 plus agencies now, 40 plus proposals. They're all listed on there. They help to give you know, prospective agencies and customers an idea what's going on. But to answer your question, Mike, like from the zero trust perch, there are some agencies that are more focusing on like that macro level zero trust architecture, if you want to call it. So you see Department of Education, USAID, Agency for Global Media. They're all looking for like kind of orchestration of what means to be in zero trust from that, again, that CIO, CISO perch. Then you can start going down, you know, what we call the pillars over at CISA with our zero trust maturity model, right? You had the zero trust maturity model, which has 5 pillars: identity, device, data, application, networks. So you look at the network pillar, OPM. It's coming with Guy Cavella and the team there toward moving out on a secure access service edge provider. So there are agencies that are leaning into secure access service edge, getting off of like the old MTIP solution, or maybe they had, you know, traditional TICs and they're moving to more modern cloud-based, like what we used to call the north-south traffic, trying to get in front of how their users may connect to the internet. And then also just lean in on identity, right? I know it's an octa-call, but you look at like HUD and what they've done for some of their one of the things, one of their bureaus inside of HUD, and how they're learning into an ICAM solution. So that just gives a preview, if you will. And again, these are on the website of how the agencies are moving forward from that zero trust perch.
Can I just ask, I'm kind of curious, when it comes to a TMF proposal, have you ever sort of said, this is important what you're putting forward, you just need to bake this into your annual budget request. This isn't a TMF thing. This is like a thing you just need to budget for.
Yeah, let me pass over to TMF team to answer that. But really quick, Raylene talked about it before. So there were 200 plus proposals received, and there's around 58 proposals now. So you could, there has been discussions back and forth. But let me pass that one over to the PMO to answer.
Yeah, just giving us the fun one. So to answer that specifically, and to get the numbers right, we have 45 active investments right now. And I think the reality is that there are lots and lots of projects that should be part or could be part of an annual budget process. And there is not enough money for everything. And so the way that tends to come across is, rather than redirecting towards this should be part of your annual appropriations, because I think you could argue that for lots of important things, is that we are looking at repayment and how to kind of flex up and down on repayment for the projects that are coming to us relative to where they serve the mission. And we can talk more about repayment, but that's really where I think it comes in, is how can we, in some ways, the beauty of the TMF is that because we're funding things for multiple years, it also means that repayment can happen more slowly. And so if a project was funded even at 100% repayment coming out of a federal budget, that's happening in smaller bits over 5 years rather than a lump sum upfront, and ensuring delivery along the way. So it's less rejecting out hand and saying that's a key mission area, but in fact, most of our projects, all of them really are focused on key mission delivery for the federal agencies that we invest in. And it's really just about getting repayment to match that as much as possible.
Yeah, I read that there's been over $3 billion of submissions and requests, which I think is an enormous demand signal for the pent-up demand for IT modernization across federal government. And that's just the ones that came forward to you, as opposed to just all the pent-up demand. So surely an important project. You mentioned key mission areas. I want to talk about customer experience for a second, which I think is actually an exceedingly important aspect of the role of the U.S. government, which is to build trust with its citizens, to have trust. Can you talk a little bit about how the role CX plays into that, and how TMF has been making investments into customer experience, citizen experience?
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note customer experience is just a frame. We, as you said, we want to make it easier for the American public to interact with the government in an equitable, secure, and usable way, and reduce the administrative burden for the federal workforce. And so more often than not, we're talking about CX as the cool part, but it is always a project to modernize, or almost always a project to modernize legacy systems. I think a lot about renovating houses as someone who lives in an old house, and you can either talk about the insulation or you can talk about how much warmer your house is in the winter. And in a lot of ways, CX is talking about how it's warmer in the house. But the money you spent is usually on the boring inside insulation that's necessary to make it warm. So some of the projects that we've invested in, we have both investments in smaller agencies where we know that we have outsized impact, and then others in larger agencies where there's more looking at digitization at scale. So smaller investments that we've been really excited about from a CX perspective are with the National Transportation Safety Board, making it easier. There's all kinds of data that NTSB has it's really important for various stakeholders to be able to access. And it's pretty hard to do that right now, to actually do the kind of investigation that's necessary. And so it's about making that information more accessible. The Bureau of Land Management, similarly, to do really what we're describing, to make it easy to access information and keeping that ease at the center of the modernization project, not just modernizing for the sake of it not being on aging infrastructure. And on the other hand, looking at a project that impacts millions of people, we have a brand new investment at the VA to tackle the digitization of forms with improved personalization, with better visualization of key information, which can really help modernize that user experience to eliminate repetition and rebuild trust, right? Every time you're repeating, as we all know from going to the doctor, when they ask your name and address again, you think, have you not had this before? And veterans are experiencing that on a very regular basis. So the goal is to really help make it easier for VA healthcare providers and have ultimately better health and veteran benefit outcomes.
What you mentioned a few specific projects and then like the warmer house in the winter kind of outcomes. But like zooming out, like what is a customer experience like category? Does it is it frictionlessness? Is it digitization of form? Is it a more interactive or accessible website? Like what counts?
I would count all of those. And yeah, I don't think it's, I think compared to other technical pieces where you may say, okay, well, this is like very specifically zero trust, and I'm not a cybersecurity person, so I'm looking down my screen at Sean and Sasha to like point us to where we need to be really militant and specific around some of the definitions. I think when we talk about customer experience, I really think of it as public experience. Like all of these that you described, whether it's websites, whether it's internal systems that speed up processing, that means that people are getting benefits faster, whether it's data sharing between agencies that ensures that, again, people are either getting information or benefits more faster or more reliably. I think all of those are examples of the public having a better experience with government. And so I would count all of those. There's no reason to be neurotic about the bounds.
Sasha, is there overlap between CX and cybersecurity? Do the two touch?
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, honestly, cybersecurity overlaps everything that we do, right? And when you modernize an outdated system, often we'll count it as like a modern high-value system modernization, right? But if you're doing that and not taking into account cybersecurity and honestly customer experience as well, then as we say, you're doing it wrong. So I think like we categorize things, at a high level to make sure that we're clear about the impact that we're having, but there are no projects which honestly like only fit into one area. Every project has impact across the portfolio, and one of the reasons I think that we've been successful so far is that we do work closely together as a team to consider all those things when we address a proposal. Even if somebody says, "Oh, this is a customer experience proposal," we want to make sure that it isn't, that it's advancing security and privacy as well, and vice versa.
Hey, Mike, one thing I just want to bring up, we were remiss if we didn't bring up Claire Monterona, the federal CIO. She's been a champion of customer experience her whole time here. And, every board meeting we have, there's certainly some, proposal or something that comes up where I can hear Claire talking to us and make sure it includes that. So that's been an important part of her focus. Another thing I just want to bring up also, though, is Jesse went a little bit into this. It's not only the public and how the public accesses the systems itself, which is critical, but a lot of these systems more for the internal. How do the internal agency users, access this new system? And over the at least the last 2+ years, I've been a board member. You start to see an evolution, if you will, of the agency proposals, recognizing that user experience is critical to the proposal. So before, again, going back 2 years, a lot of those proposals came in. We had to push back, say collectively between the board and the PMO, to the agency saying, are you talking to the end user? Are they included in this process? Well, now a lot of the proposals come to us, they already have that baked in somewhere. So they are tracking to a much greater degree than we saw 2 years ago, how the end user is going to be impacted and effectively use that system once it's online.
Hey, you're talking to a former Navy Reserve officer. So, I mean, you got to sailor-proof everything or else we're going to break it. We are going to break it.
Yeah, great example. Yeah, exactly.
Jesse, I wanted to sort of keep hugging CX. On the TMF PMO website, you released a template around the 21st Century IDEA Act guidance. I've always kind of been personally kind of confused. CX is like this enduring, important mission of making websites more interactive, build trust. How does 21st century play into that? How's that different or same, or just double clicking it into the CX mission set?
Absolutely. So to us, 21st century idea is but a lot to help make some of this stuff possible, and underscore its importance. So to us, it's not separate. And one of the interesting things we've seen actually with putting out this call is that we were always interested in funding website improvements, improving web accessibility, updating forms. But in putting out this call, we've been surprised at the number of folks who needed to kind of hear that request more specifically and have since responded to that. So it's not so much that this was ever separate or not an interest of the TMF, but being super explicit that this is a key and important part of digitizing, like improving your website. You have to be keeping accessibility at the core for all users, that actually just makes it possible. So the projects that we're looking for, though, in this particular case are ones where we can deliver impact quickly. So we know that in these templates in particular, we know that application processes are tricky to get right. We know that for public benefits, we know that for federal grants, and we know that even as applying for TMF investment can sometimes be tricky. And so with this one, we knew there are some really classic plays that one follows in order to improve web accessibility or digitizing public-facing forms. Like, these are paths that a lot of agencies have taken. And so instead of asking someone to write that up from scratch, we wrote it up for the agencies to figure out where on that timeline they may fit in, and then be able to apply. So the real goal here is to have agencies spend less time drafting their application and more time actually doing their mission delivery.
I know that milestones and gating kind of is important. Can you talk about sort of what are the elements that create a milestone, an important milestone for you? Is it like internal system setup, and then it's external value for like the customer experience of the public, or is it batched by money? What forms a good sort of milestone and gating structure for TMF applications?
Sasha, you want to take that one? I've been talking a lot.
Sure. Yeah. So back out a little bit on the process. So TMF projects are funded incrementally, right? So we don't give you, the whole hog up front, right? Because we think that to make technology programs successful or projects successful, you need to do them in an agile way and learn from your experience as you go. So, we fund projects incrementally based on milestones, and those milestones generally are concrete delivery of value. And sometimes that is internal value, sometimes that is straight to the customer. I will say that for a 3-year project, when you plan your milestones up front, often you learn things that aren't, that you thought initially were wrong, right? So we as the PMO and with the board's approval can work with agencies to refine those milestones as they learn things going forward, right? So if you think, for example, that you're going to launch a particular part of the project first, and then do the internal facing stuff later, and it turns out that you actually have to do the internal stuff first, we will work with you to modify those milestones so that if you are delivering value and you have a reasonably well considered idea of why you're changing your path or how you're changing your priorities, the TMF will work with you to make sure that we help you be successful with the project, even if you're not doing exactly what you thought you would 3 years ago. Because honestly, no, technology project ever follows a plan exactly. But those milestones generally are based on value delivery, ideally to the customer, but often, involve hiring people to help set up customer delivery.
It sounds like communication is important during this process, both with the PMO and with the agencies. Can you talk about what it's like working not just with, like, say, a mission owner at an agency, but also their CFO or budget team? does there need to be full buy-in from from the budget team before there's a presentation to you, or how does that sort of play out?
Sure. Yeah, so I mean, we fully expect buy-in from both of those folks. Agencies that have really strong proposals and project outcomes need really strong support from their leadership. So to get to the final proposal phase and get in front of the board, you need to have that buy-in from the CFO, the CIO, and various administrators. That said, we are here to help every step of the way, and we have sometimes and often actually talked to some agencies before they had some of that buy-in to help them think about what they needed to pitch strongly internally as well as externally, and get some of the buy-in that they need. But without those folks, most of these kind of large-scale, high-impact projects just won't succeed.
Could you give maybe the viewers a sense of scale and time? Like, what's the throughput? Is this a 3-month process? Is this a year? Is this somewhere in between?
Yes, with the heavy caveat always of it depends. We've worked really hard on reducing the time from when we start talking to folks to initial transfer. We will say just one of the metrics we have was the initial proposal phase, that first shorter one. It used to take an average of over 6 months to get a response, get a final answer from the board. And now we average about 52 days. And we are almost always getting folks, contact from the PMO. It often, I think, felt like throwing things into a black hole in the past, and now firmly we're getting responses, at least some form of contact within a week. So people are hearing from us even if there's not a determination yet. So they are in active conversation and working on their proposal rather than throwing it over the wall and hoping.
Okay, I appreciate that. And then what do you look for in that initial proposal? Like, does the whole thing have to be baked? Does it have to be PowerPoint just perfect? Or like, what's the threshold to come talk to you if you're an agency?
Yeah, Sasha, you want?
Yeah, so I mean, honestly, the threshold to come talk to us initially is, hey, we have a problem and we think we need help solving. We have a staff of experts in various areas, and we're happy to consult with agencies on, some possible ways to solve that problem. The more likely case is agencies come to us with a problem and, like moderately well-developed idea on how they're going to solve that problem. We look for certain things, like we look for, a reasonably thought through technical approach, an idea of how long it's going to take and how much money. And that will often change as agencies refine the proposal through the process. Those numbers may modify. And we look for teams that have a high likelihood of success. One of the things that we do look for that honestly is sometimes a problem for agencies is articulating the impact that the project will have, whether it's on the public or on internal, as Sean mentioned earlier. We really look for projects that will have kind of direct impact on folks. So for example, agencies will come to us and say, hey, we have this old system, we need to replace it. And that may be true, but why? Like, what is the impact that using an old system has on either, it's the people who maintain it, right, or you're struggling to find, kind of older expertise to maintain an older system, or maybe, the user experience is bad because it's based on, green screen frames. So one of the things we really look for is, does an agency have a sense of what the impact of the problem is, not just, it's a thing we think we need to fix.
One thing I want to just add, and Sasha kind of went into this a little bit, again, just from where we were a couple of years ago to where we are now. A lot of the agencies, when they had those proposals a couple of years ago, they're coming into the PMO, having to articulate a lot of the numbers, and this is the budget and the initial proposal, and really to where Sasha was going. Those first discussions really just need to be more about the why. Why is this important? How is this going to be impactful to the agency or to the customers. There's more story to be told in those first discussions. So we were really trying to make sure the agencies reached out to PMO as soon as possible, just to understand the level of effort that's needed for the initial proposal versus where we go toward the FPP, the full proposal, which more gets in the nitty gritty, the who, the what, the where, and the actual financials themselves. And I think, we saved some agencies from those initial efforts going away from going deep into the numbers before it's even really where we need to be at that point to later on in the proposal process.
And in articulating kind of the need and the impact, is some of that an easier lift than others? Like, it seems to me that there's very clear guidance that agencies should be moving towards phishing-resistant MFA, multi-factor authentication. Like, it strikes me that doesn't need a lot of why. That seems to be.
Yeah. To answer your point a little differently, when we talked about this before, right? The cyber executive order, OMB's federal zero trust strategy, the memo that came out, the TIC capabilities and the TIC initiative out of OMB. When agencies embed those type of requirements or memos or visions into their proposals, it helps us understand that they know what they're trying to do. It's not just we want to do a like some type of license upgrade, or we need to get this new device. That's not the intent of modernization. So it's really going back to how can other guidance, memos, again, something coming out, reinforce that vision from the White House, OMB, and others.
But we also, I think those things are important, but I also, we also want to get the sense that the agency knows why they're following those directives. It feels often that agencies are coming to us with a checklist of things they need to do, and in many cases they are correct. They do need to do that, but they will be more successful if they understand why and what the impact of those things will be. So we look to both, right? Is like following those directives, but also following them in a sense that an order that makes sense and will have the highest impact.
Yeah, Sasha brings up a great point. Just to give an example from a different one, again, from the Zero Trust Strategy, EDR, endpoint detection response. Some agencies just came to us and said, we need to do EDR because it's in the memo. But some other agencies were more interesting, came to us and they said, well, we need to do EDR more comprehensively across enterprise, but part of what we need to do is collapse the tech stack. A lot of these agencies are federated and have bureaus or optives or components. There may be multiple EDR components across, and it's really hard the CIO or the CISO to be able to manage that. So some of this is just, again, broadening out, the service and answering, like Sasha said, the whys are necessary. But again, some of this is also just collapsing the tech stack to give it more of an enterprise solution.
How often do you have to come in as an expert and say, I see what you want to do. You can do that if you want. I don't think it's going to turn out well. Like, if you go all in here, or if you fracture the tech stack this way, or like just as an implementer.
Yeah, let me toss that softball over to Sasha. He leads a team that does that from the cyber side. Go ahead, Sasha.
Yeah, I think it's actually it's more frequently not like you're wrong, and more, what makes you think that's going to be successful? Did you base it on market research? Did you base it on user research? I think we see it a lot in the less, I think, in the strictly cyber side, and more on the modernization side, is that agencies will come to us, with screenshots, right? And of their new system. And in digging in, we find out that they, like, those are based on, some, I don't know even what, right? But not based on user research, and not based on really trying to solve the problem, but trying to like replicate the old system with new technology. And that is rarely successful. But in general, like we rarely tell people they're doing it wrong, and more often really want to interrogate why they're choosing the path they are. And in those conversations, we will often end up that they are choosing a different path.
Okay. One other recent example to just expand this. There was one agency that their proposal came in, And part of the first process was piloting. And when they came back from the piloting, they realized this isn't going where he thought it was. And they actually came back to TMF with I don't want to say a different proposal, but a different solution or choice than they themselves originally proposed. And we thought that was great, more agile solution, more pivoting. But it is something where we may have to work with agencies to understand, like Sasha's talking about, those new solutions that may not have been initially the vision that was set forth.
Director Burrell spoke about partnering with industry and being from industry. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, what are good examples of what that looks like and what are bad examples? I take, for example, your note that it's really good when an agency comes to you with a problem to solve. Do they often come to you like with a solution to buy kind of first, and then how do you help them work with industry in implementation and partnering together?
Go ahead, Jesse or Sasha, I think.
Yeah. So I think firstly, we care most, and you heard this from Sheena, we care most about engaging with agencies in the proposal process. And where industry really can play an incredible role is, as Sheena also shared, is connecting federal customers with one another to understand the risks and opportunities for implementing whatever commercial product it is. But when we're talking with agencies, whatever product it is that they may be buying or industry partners they may be working with, that is often but one part of the overall thing that they are doing. Implementing any given product does not kind of get to the culture issues and change management that Sheena referenced. And so we are looking at that part of the equation just as much in terms of what will make a project successful. Buying any given product on its own, as many of the industry partners on this call know, just buying it does not actually make it work. In the agency, there's a lot of culture change that needs to happen. And some agencies approach us in the early stages where they don't know what product or which products will meet their needs. And so that's actually part of what we may fund for them, is that they need to do some of that investigation. Others that have identified a mission need and know that they need capital to invest in certain products in particular. So that's been our biggest focus as a PMO, is really making sure that those agency partners are doing that work and being really candid about what their needs are to make sure they get the right product, rather than being able, of course, we are not in a position to push them towards or away from any given product on its own.
Right. Okay. So we're in our last 10, 15 minutes. So I have sort of three buckets I'd like to cover just maybe quickly. I have a lightning round sort of true false kind of question for you. I want to just at least acknowledge some of the audience questions too. So if you're in the audience and you have other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A. But before all that, I hope this isn't prejudicial, but I would love to hear for each of you what your most exciting TMF investment is. Like of all the investments, like I know all of your children, you love them all equally. But is there one that just is exciting to you that you're like, wow, like that was an idea. Like, I hope that, maybe start with you, Sasha, since I just got the most disapproval from your face.
I'm sure that our comms team will not appreciate this question, but I actually personally is login. I think that it is our biggest investment, and it has been a challenging one, but I think that the potential for the potential for transformation is so big, and it is a challenge that's so huge. I mean, as Sean will tell you, the number of identity and authentication proposals that we get is huge, and login is not the right solution for all of those things, but in many cases it is really just like a way to transform the user experience, not just in particular agencies, right, but across the federal enterprise. And so that one has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, I know it's special for Okta. We've been helping implement it at different agencies and built a custom integration for that platform. Sean?
Yeah, being a voting member, I need to be very sensitive here, like you said, pick your favorite child. I'll be honest though, and I need to be sort of circumspect here. There is proposal possibly coming in to the TMF. It's one that we've been working with for well over a year plus in different ways, and we've had to go back and forth with the agency multiple times, understand, what they want to do, and then they've shifted some agenda items, but ideally, I hope that we started to thread all the needles correctly. So stay tuned, but there is one that, close to my heart.
All right, that's fair. Jesse, it sounds like this question wasn't a winner. Any?
Oh no, well, I love it, but I am laughing. I am a parent of twins, and so I actually am very well versed in the not being. Yeah, I really can't pick a favorite. But I do have a few that I love, and so in fact I'm struggling because I love a bunch of them a lot. The Department of Labor permanent visa project is one that I am really fond of for a couple of reasons. I think one is that frankly they've gotten to production pretty quickly, and that is the kind of value that we want to see delivered. That they really have been focused on that, and I also have a very soft spot for both of our VA investments. I think that team is really doing an incredible amount of work to change the services that they are providing to veterans across the country. And that's been both in the identity space, where they really are trying to understand how people use products so that it is rooted in customer experience and cybersecurity. So those are two of my favorites, but I do love a lot of them.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Mike, I'll throw you a quick bone though. There's one that's actually completed, but it impacted me more than I thought it would. Was a HUD had one where they're migrating a mainframe, and there were a lot of lessons learned out of there that I think proved valuable. Like just a simple one, just to abstract this out a little bit. The mainframe they were coming off was like 1980s, and just simple things like all the PII that was on there. The data fields, like the person's last name or street names are much longer 40 years later than they were back then. And they had to just go through and correct millions of lines of data as this mainframe got moved over to a more cloud focused system. And just, or it was maybe been 10 digits for a street name, 1980. Now they had to accommodate for 20 digits or something. Just hearing how they went through those type of processes really was enlightening to me.
I appreciate that. You didn't ask, but Okta's favorite is HUD as well. Okay, there was a question from the audience on AI and about use case. I know that there is guidance baking at the White House level. Sasha, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't think we want to really comment much on that until the guidance is out. We wouldn't want to get ahead of our skis here.
Perfectly fair. Appreciate that. There was a question from the audience on how a government shutdown could impact TMF, partly because it's a working capital fund, it's not annual appropriations, but I imagine PMO staff salaries are annually appropriated. So what does TMF mean, or what happens to TMF investments when if there were a shutdown or a CR? Jesse, maybe you.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, we're waiting for official GSA guidance on this. The TMF PMO does continue to operate based on the availability of Know Your Resources, but that's, again, all pending guidance in the next week or so.
Okay. All right. I think this is meant to be like a lightning round, true, false, mythbusters about TMF. So buckle up. We covered some of these, but one is that like TMF is for big agencies. This is a bucket of money only for cabinet level DOJ kind of sized agencies. True or false? Jesse.
Oh, those are my favorites. Those are my favorite ones that I didn't mention. Yeah. My true favorite child is the Railroad Retirement Board, which is but a micro agency that is really doing tremendous work to serve its customers.
I knew we'd get that out of you. Okay.
Yeah.
For the win. Okay, and then how about flip that? How about this? DoD intelligence community not applicable. Don't bother applying. Is that the case? Have there been any investments in the DoD IC?
Yeah, we have one investment with the DoD, with the Army, and we are certainly open to other investments as they come.
Okay. How about this as a question? Do not engage the PMO until all your ducks are in a line. Everybody agrees that the agency from top to bottom, total buy-in from the CFO, plan is built flawlessly. True or false?
I think everyone knows the answer at this point. That now that we have grown and have the right capacity here, we are really eager and love speaking with agencies. I do actually want to underscore what Sheena talked about earlier, that she wants to see from the PMO is what we've been doing. But those proposals that we've really been playing a coaching role in have not quite come to the board because we are spending some time coaching them. So absolutely, we've been spending a lot of time supporting agencies to really get their pitch and buy-in from across their leadership where needed.
Okay. Technology Modernization Fund. Therefore, only funds technologies, not staff. If there's any staff implications, don't put it in the budget. Not going to be funded. True or false?
That's false. We believe that agencies really need to develop, technical ownership of projects, and so we encourage them to make sure that they have the right level of staff, whether that's hiring new people, whether that's training existing folks. The one caveat is that our funding generally is 2 or 3 years. So, we expect folks to have a plan to keep those folks on afterwards or not as is appropriate. But yeah, I mean, we understand the role of trained folks in these projects, and we want to support them.
Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to cover. I just kind of wanted to open the floor for Sasha, Jesse, Sean, any kind of parting shots or things that you'd be remiss if you didn't get out. Either, just on, again, the title, Celebrating TMF and Big Investments Made, or just common confusions and demystifying the process. I'll just open it up.
Yeah, I think I just want to add that one thing we didn't really address is our role once the project has been funded. In that we, as I said earlier, we help agencies kind of react to changes, but we also help connect agencies with resources that they may need around procurement or other particular needs, and really we play a supportive role for agencies in helping them navigate the project even after funding, and we help them communicate regularly their progress to the board.
Sean, Jesse?
Yeah, I'll go for my side. I mentioned the website earlier with the agencies and like the listed. I also know that, and I think Sheena is a great example of this. Some of those proposals that have closed out, I mentioned the HUD one and some other ones. Those leaders at those agencies are great advocates for us. So if you have a question or just how to go for you, feel free to reach out to the PMO and they can connect you with the right people, or maybe you already know them across it. But I think the proposals of the agencies that have already gone through the process, I think they can be a great way to help new proposals come in or understand what to look for.
Yes, to bring us home.
We've just been really excited about our partnership with both industry and agencies, and proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the past year. So thank you so much, Mike and Ross, for hosting us today, and hopefully we can come back. We're eager to come back next year with more to show for our work. So thank you.
Well, as an industry representative, let me just say thank you for the work you do. Thank you for your public service. I know you could be elsewhere doing other things, but the fact that taking time in your lives to work for the greater good of the American people, to improve customer experience in cybersecurity, that's an important thing. It's a good initiative. It's a good program. Appreciate Congress for creating it, Congress for funding it, Congress for reauthorizing it. So thank you for your time today, and I appreciate that. And also the audience, thank you for coming and spending maybe like an hour and a half with us. So really appreciate for those who stuck in the whole time to the bitter end. Appreciate it. Take care, everyone. Goodbye.